thank you, Ito. I mean, there you go. That gentleman, to Vicky's point, I've been following Ito, I guess, since 2004. I don't know. It just seems like it's been forever. So before I kind of, well, good morning, sir. Are we going to set you up? You got some time. No. Well, you are, but you got at least a half hour. Take a break. So, yeah, just right there. Or maybe, hey, Drake, well, you can't set that up until I'm done. But anyway, so we're good. So to Vicky's question, Vicky and I have been friends forever, so we're almost empathic. So how long have we been talking about this? It's been forever. But if you go, I was going to bring up this slide to give Ito a little bit more context, but this project here, who was selling real estate in Moreno Valley in the early 90s? Okay, so for those of us that were around in the early 90s, Moreno Valley we were up and coming. We were booming. I mean, the building craze was crazy into the mid to late 80s and the early 90s, and then it wasn't. So as I was kind of doing my introduction on how I met Chris Thornberg, I was going through the story of my life and my residential real estate life. Well, part of that residential real estate life was when everything came to a halt in whatever that was in 2001-ish. If I pulled this little image off of here, there's a big area of undeveloped residential land, which I think at one point was supposed to be part of Moreno Valley Ranch, or maybe it was around Moreno Valley Ranch. But to my knowledge, and again, Ito's left, so he could correct me, or maybe Moses can correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, back in the late 80s and early 90s, all of that was planned. It was graded. There was who remembers all of the slabs that were poured and never had homes built on them? There were dozens and hundreds of slabs. And then the whole world stopped. The whole world stopped. And at least in this regard, that project stopped. So every bit of vacant land that Highland Fairview and Ito and the team are proposing for Aquabella, had the market been different 30 years ago, it would have already been built. I mean, they were building all that. So at any rate, which is interesting, because that's kind of an interesting segue into why I do this. I was giving you guys my lead up and my introduction to Chris. So. And I was trying to set the stage as, what are we doing here? I'll tell you what I'm doing here. This is 100% business planning to me, okay? When I first started doing my very first market forecast, I was following Chris around, and I think it was 2005 or 2006. And who remembers Rio Mac, who was doing the foreclosures back in the day with Rio Mac? We were down at the JW Marriott in Palm Desert, and Chris spoke. And if you were in the real estate business back then, was the market awesome in 2005? It was awesome, okay? But if you were me, not that I was the smartest guy in the room, but I was like, God, something doesn't feel so awesome about this. This just feels like something bad is about to happen. And my mom and dad are in the business, and they were retired at that point, and I would go see my mom and dad every time, and we talked shop, and my grandma was in the business, and we talked shop. And every time I got together with my mom and dad in 2002 and 3 and 4 and 5, the same word would always come up, and that word was unsustainable. And we were always talking about the real estate market, and it was on fire. So at any rate, so I see Chris, and to my knowledge, he was head and shoulders or far ahead of anybody else. I go see him down in Palm Desert, the JW Marriott, and he's like, he can tell you what he actually said, but my interpretation of what he said is, party's over, guys. Bad things are about to happen. And if you were not in that world, people were looking at him like, you know what the hell he's talking. What are you talking about? Everything's pie in the sky. I can get 120% loan-to-value mortgage. What could be wrong with that? How dare you pour cold water on this marketplace? So at any rate, I've been chasing him around for, I guess it's been close to 20 years. So which brings us to the forecast. So rather than me go to Florida or Dallas or somewhere else and buy a ticket to see Chris, I said, screw it. It's just better for me to hire him and have him come speak. So basically, Chris has been coming and speaking to us for the last year, which is what he's going to be doing here in a minute as soon as I get done. So also, if you've attended my forecast in the past, we do a lot of in-studio stuff. Some of you may see your picture on the screen here. You're like, Lance, you didn't tell me I was going to do an interview with you. If your picture's on the screen, you're doing an interview with me. So by the way, Chris, we're going to do an interview in studio at some point in the next month or so. So we'll do a debrief on this. We'll bring him into the studio. We'll do our thing. So this video series will come up, and we'll do that. Ito will also come in studio. He doesn't know it yet, but Moses, we're going to get Ito in studio. We're going to do a little thing with Ito. Mr. Dowling, CEO of Inland Valleys Association of Realtors. We've been doing this dance now for multiple years. If you're not, by the way, is all the IVAR stuff public? All the data? Okay, if you like this sort of stuff, you're here, so obviously you have an interest in this sort of data, but maybe you're not a member of the Inland Valleys Association of Realtors, but you want more data, either reach out to Mark or reach out to me. What I just asked Mark is the information that they put out public facing? Sounds like it is. So I will share that with you. Every month, Mark and his team put out dynamite stuff. At least once a month, Mark and I are texting each other, what's going on? Or we're sharing articles with each other. So anyway, so Mark is one of my go-to guys on business planning. Art Carter, this is more of the industry side. This is where I got to kind of figure out who's my audience. Art is the CEO and president of CRMLS, our multiple listing service. For some of you in the room, you could care less. You're not realtors. You don't have anything to do with that. But if you are a realtor and you've been paying attention to what's going on in our industry, which is a totally different topic of what we're going to talk about today, Art's going to give us that industry update, so I'll get him back in studio. Art and I have been doing, frankly, the same thing that Mark and I have been doing for many years. Ed Zorn, who's legal counsel for Sierra MLS, again, he's one of the legal beagles. We're going to get him in studio. You'll see a video from him here shortly. Nick's not here, but Nick is my outlier. Nick is got, kind of like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. And again, if he's going to watch this video, he's going to scream at me. But Nick is like total data. And most of the time, Nick and I are not in agreement on what's going on. So we'll see what he has to say. We'll bring him up as well. And then Barry O'Connor, who's a landlord or a tenant. I promise not to. Okay, so I got a couple of you in here. I won't ask you to raise your hand again. I always fail when we do that. But we are a property management company. Okay, and if I'm being honest, our focus with Drew and Drake and our entity is shifting dramatically from what's going on in the real estate operation to what's going on in the property management operation, which is one of the reasons I'm here. If you didn't hear Ito, 15,000 multifamily rentals in the middle of Moreno Valley. When I first started talking to Ito about this a dozen years ago, we weren't building rentals. We were building houses to sell for people to live in. Well, part of me is like, well, that kind of sucks. Now we're not building houses in the middle of the Moreno Valley. We're building apartments in the middle of Moreno Valley, which, well, guess what? I just need to change my hats. Coldwell Banker Town and Country, we'll put that aside. Cobalt Property Management, how about we put that one on? So, this again, a lot of this business planning stuff is where we're at. So, if you do own a rental or you're thinking about owning a rental, we can help you. But you better come into this with eyes wide open because we live in California. And it was difficult pre-COVID, pre-Tenant Protection Act. Well, it's a little bit different now. So Barry's going to come in and he's going to help us out. I have another slide about some of the stuff that's going on. If you are a landlord or tenant, you know all about the Tenant Protection Act. We're going to do a thing on that with Barry. But there's a new thing going on. I'll give you 30 seconds of this, and then if you're interested in it, wait for the interview with Barry O'Connor. Who's familiar with AB 246? I don't have time to get into the details, but AB 246 is kind of an extension of the Tenant Protection Act, and I believe, will have a dramatic impact on housing and who you're going to want to rent to and what sort of rules they fall into. It's way too much to get into today, but if you're a landlord or a tenant, you should be keeping an eye on AB 246. Don't wait for my video. Call me after this thing is over. We can talk about it offline because it's a big deal in my opinion. And then Mike Marconi, and we've got Jim with Orange Coast Title. We have a relationship and partners with them. I always have somebody from OCT come in and tell us what's going on. And then I've had a long relationship with the regional chamber, so I'm going to bring Ed in, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the Regional Chamber of Commerce. So those are the videos that you're going to see. So we already talked a little bit about the politics things. We're going to go through that, so keep an eye out on that. We'll see what's going to happen with that. On the politics side, this is what I have in mind for that. I want to interview Jesse Armendariz, supervisor in San Bernardino. Gutierrez, supervisor in Riverside, and a couple of other guys. I'm just going to go past this slide, but my intention is to bring these folks up, and then we're going to basically talk about politics, the 2026 elections. So, and I see Mark nodding up and down. Mark and Ivar does a lot of this stuff, so who knows? I might even partner up with Mark, and we'll see what happens. Really quickly on our sponsors. By the way, everybody on here didn't pay me a dime, so if you're up here, that means we're really good friends, and I love you. So, at any rate, thanks to Chris for doing his thing always. Property management is us, of course. Global Banker is us, of course. The escrow side is us, of course. But the Orange Coast Title, again, thank you to Jim and all the rest of those guys for always supporting us. Danny, love you, brother. So, by the way, Danny's up here for one reason and one reason alone. Who's a salesperson in here? Call your clients. If Danny had not called me 2 days ago, Danny's slide would not be up here. And by the way, he didn't even call me to say, hey, can I sponsor? Can I put you up there? He just called me. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So that's why you're here. Call your clients. God forbid you make some phone calls. It pays dividends. And then again, Kathy is a good friend of mine with Fidelity National. So again, thank you guys for sponsoring. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. So I do a lot of stuff like Chris and others, but I do a totally different spin. I've never really taken the time to do it at this event. So since I bought the coffee, you guys are going to have to listen to me for a few more minutes, and then we'll bring Chris up. So who sees my weekly or my monthly snapshot? 3 of you. Great. If you have any interest in what you're going to see, then you might want to pay attention to this. Here's the QR code. It's the same QR code. You can get there anytime you want. This is kind of my logo, if you will. I was at an event with Moses and Ido 2 weeks ago with the chamber. By the way, that's fog, if you can't see what's going on there. And I thought Ido might have used this description today. I believe we are in a marketplace, and I'm stealing this from Ido to give him full credit. He was talking about developing these projects, and it kind of says, kind of like we're in a fog. Okay, so I want to go there, and I want to go there. And not only do I want to go there, I'm going there, but I'm driving down the 60 freeway, and it's a little foggy. So what do? You slow down, maybe you pull over to the side of the road, you stop, you wait for the fog to lift, and I think that's the marketplace that we're in right now. I think we're in a very, very foggy marketplace, whether it's tariffs or politics or interest rates, or is the market too hot? Is the market going to crash? So hopefully maybe some of the fog gets lifted here a little bit. I throw this slide up a lot. I've shown this to some friends. They're like, Lance, you're not calling your audience sheep, are you? I'm like, no, the exact opposite. Don't follow what's going on. Get your own data. Figure out what's going on, put your business plan together, and away you go. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. So this was from our forecast 2 years ago. Yes, I showed this slide last year. Yes, I showed this slide 2 years ago. Yes, that is me. That's 50 pounds of me, a little more of me than I currently stand today. So I'm going to show this video. This is another reason why Chris Thornberg is in this room today. So let's listen to this from March 24th of 2001. It's not very long audio clip. So let's see what we got.
24th, let's say, of March. We're pre-recording this, so we're a few days early, and we're in the low threes. Any idea where we're going to be in the end of year rates? I think rates are going to continue to drift up. Like 10-year bond rates are coming up. You're talking about you're getting that return to normalcy. Right. The federal government's going to be absorbing a lot of free cash out there, $4 trillion in issuances this year. Okay. That also suggests interest rates are going to continue to go up. Now, what do we come into this at? You could probably get, a mortgage in the 4% range coming into this. I think a year ago around 4%. I anticipate by next year we'll probably be back to that 4% range. So now the question is what happens beyond that, and of course that's a lot to do with inflation and the federal government and everything else. But I would argue that, if they don't do much, eat up inflation, we could get back to 6 or 7% mortgage rates in 5 to 6 years. Yeah, there's a quote. It's possible.
Okay. I've been told a lot of times that there could not be a more unattractive place for me to stop that actual video. But at any rate, there I am. So I'll leave that up for a minute so you guys can just absorb that at my expense. But you got to put that in context. That was March of 2021. Nobody that I follow everybody, said that we could be at 6 or 7% interest rates a few years later. And that I'm like, oh, because I knew in 2001 If that happened, which I'm like, Chris, you are full of it. There is no, because nobody was saying that. Okay? Well, guess what? Here we are. So back then, that's why to me this is a business planning session. I looked at my business. I don't know if I adjusted well enough, but I'm like, well, I guess I better prepare myself for much higher interest rates, basically a doubling of interest rates. I'm not sure I knew exactly what that meant, but I was preparing myself that as of March 21st. Then the following year, we brought Chris back. This was one of our COVID years. We did an in-studio thing, and then he said this.
Real estate itself, look, if you look at affordability, real estate's still affordable once you account for interest rates. But if interest rates get to 7%, well, housing is no longer affordable.
Right? Now, again, I'm listening to that. I'm thinking, 7%. We're not going to get to 7%. Well, we got to 7%. And guess what? Housing was no longer affordable, which is why we're in this little mess we're in here. So if you're wondering why I keep bringing Chris back year after year after year, because he's the only one, and I follow all of them. Who's mortgage bankers? I follow all those guys. Barry Habib walks on water. I think he's awesome. He's been wrong. Chris has not been wrong. And by the way, there's some improvement on interest rates. I think Chris is going to pour a whole bunch of cold water on that here. So we'll let him talk about that. And then, of course, we've got the Fed. If you've been following what's going on with the Fed, a lot of news like right now. Heck, I think this morning they're talking about a 75 basis point cut. Really? Really? How do you go from 0 to a quarter to 50 to 75? So we'll see what happens with the Fed. We'll let Chris talk about that. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what I know. Everything else right there, this is what I know. So this is what's going on in the markets that I track. This is median price in the 4 marketplaces that are basically Riverside, San Bernardino, LA, and Orange County. This deck is available. If you guys don't watch my stuff, you have access to this deck right now. Just get the link tree. You can click on that, and you can gather all this information. So what have we seen in prices? If you look at this is 15 years of data, by the way. This goes all the way back to 2008. If you look at the far right-hand side of the chart, every single county, looks like San Bernardino might have ticked up a little bit, but basically we've seen some softness in prices for the last couple of months. Is that crazy? No. Quite honestly, it's not even unusual. But if you want to, and by the way, this is lovely. If you look at the far right and you see a bunch of green arrows and one black arrow, this is August to August, the 4 counties, August of 2025 compared to August of 2026. And basically that is about as flat as you possibly could be. 1%, 0.5%, 0%. This is appreciation. 1% in San Bernardino. Now, if I do it next month, is it going to be a little bit different? Sure, because these things are, they bounce around. Could be up a couple points, could be down a couple points. But we're basically flat in prices. We'll see what that means. Having said that, and just to go back a slide, you always see this choppiness in here. So, from month to month, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I hear mortgage applications are up. I hear title orders are up. That's awesome. Buyer demand. Maybe we've got some interest rates that are going to improve for a month or 2 or 3. Who knows? But anyway, so that's what's going on in price in the 4 counties. I isolate this, and I don't know if Chris has a comment. By the way, we don't share our stuff. We don't compare notes. But if you've been in the business for the last few years, the area that's circled is basically April 2022 to November 2022, and we saw what felt at the time to be a pretty dramatic drop in median price. And there was a lot of people talking about crashes and the world's going to end and all the rest of that. I'm not calling crashes. I don't think we're going to see any significant price destruction or pullback, but I do think we're going to, for the next several months, I think it's going to be a little bit painful. I think we very well could see some price pullback. We're seeing it already. I mean, when we could see it. Supply and demand, these are new listings. A lot of talk about listing inventory and what's going on. This is last month, by the way. These are new listings that came in the 4 counties in the month of August, okay? Basically, again, if you look at the down, every single one of these trends is down, 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 down. We're basically taking fewer listings, okay? Kind of makes sense. I want to sell my house, honey. Well, yeah, there's a lot of houses for sale. It doesn't seem to be doing what we need to be doing. If you're a realtor right now in this business, if you're not priced right, you're probably going to have a little trouble. But anyway, new listings are down. Now, there's been a lot of talk. By the way, these are what they are down. This is August to August. 6.5% in LA down, 15% in Orange down, 15.4% Riverside down, 12% down. So we're taking less listings in the month of August of 2025 than we did a year ago. Were we taking a lot of listings a year ago? Not really. We're taking fewer. The next shot or slide is all listings. These are all active listings. These are all the listings that haven't been sold. Some have been on the market for 30 days. Some have been on the market for 6 months. So we throw all of them into the hopper. And what you've probably been hearing is the inventory is rising. It has been, but again, if you look at the far right side of that, well, maybe there's this new term I don't think I've heard of. It's probably been around for a while. I've been hearing about delisting. Okay, have anybody been delisted here? In other words, you had a listing and the seller said, "Thank you very much, I'm not going to sell anymore," or maybe I'm going to sell with somebody else. I do think there's a little bit. I have in my office right now. I have a thing. You're either a seller or you're not. Okay. Are you a real seller? Because if you're not a real seller, this is not a time in the marketplace to go fool around and say, hey, that's this. Hey, the last comp was 800. I think I'll try 800. It's just a very, very difficult market for that. Having said that, the overall supply of listings is up. The other one was down, so this is up. 11% more listings in LA, 10% in Orange, 5 in Riverside County, 13 in San Bernardino County. So we have more listings in total on the marketplace than we did a year ago. Having said that, if you've been following my stuff for the last 6-7 years, I have been bitching and complaining about we do not have enough houses to sell, okay? The fact that we have more houses today than we did before doesn't change anything. We still need houses to sell. This is not a bad thing, okay? The fact that we actually have a few more listings, God forbid, is not a bad thing. But listing inventory is up. So, I mean, it is what it is. This is the painful part. This is where I got to be careful. I have people, oh, Lance, you're so negative. Oh, my God. If I had a nickel for every time, oh, I'm so negative. I'm not negative. This is the data. You know, maybe my tone sometimes could be a little bit different. But who makes their living on selling houses, doing mortgage, opening title orders? Raise your hand. Has it been fun? Hasn't been fun. It's been tough. Been brutal. Okay? For those of you that don't make your living doing on that, then we're going to share with you why this has been tough and why this has been a little bit brutal. This is 15 years of pending sales. We are at record low in every county, which, by the way, these are county numbers. But you see how the EKG kind of tracks? I don't care if you're in LA. I don't care if you're in Orange. I don't care if you live in Newport Beach or Moreno Valley. The charts are almost identical. You know, there's some localness, of course, to it. But if I literally put up Newport Beach and the city of Moreno Valley, probably couldn't be more different. The charts would probably almost mirror identically when it comes to all this. But the far right, we're not selling a lot of houses. So what does that mean? Those numbers, those are all negative numbers, 22, 30, 12, 29%. Those are fewer sales than a year ago. Were sales a year ago awesome? No, they weren't awesome. So they're even less awesome than they are now. But if you want to go back, let's just compare, say, to 2021. Just take the top number. 4,940 homes were sold in the county of Los Angeles in August of 2021. Well, we sold 2,298 homes last month. It's a little bit more than 22.5%. So we're just not selling as many houses. Why is that? Interest rates, confidence in the market, affordability, whatever it happens to be. So these are the pending sale numbers. This is just the same chart with just a different look. When I say highs and lows are all in the wrong places, what we're looking at here is, what I did is I said, let's take a different look at this. This is just Los Angeles County. The other chart, there's just too much nonsense going on. It's too hard to see. So this is just Los Angeles counties. If you take a look at the peaks and valleys of Los Angeles, for example, all of these low spikes, every single one of these, with the exception of that one down there that says except for COVID, is December of that year. So this is 2008, 9, 10, 11, December. There might be one that's November, but for the most part, sales bottom in the month of December every year for 15 years. Who's a data person other than me and Laura? Okay. This is, you run a business on this. You run a business on this. When are sales high? When are sales low? Now, again, you got COVID right there, which, you know, that was different. That was April of 2020. But if you go all the way to the right, we're like at the bottom. And it's August. It's not December. So what does December look like? What does December look like with pending sales? I think it looks ugly. Does it look ugly, Mark? I think it looks ugly. So again, oh, Lance, you're so negative. Oh, my God. No. I'm trying to make some plans, guys. trying to make some plans. So these are record low sales. Is it all interest rates? I think it's got a big part of it. If you've been following my stuff, I am obsessed with interest rates. And then when I think we're going to see some improvement, Dr. Thornberg comes up and says, just slow down there, little fella. It might be good for a day or for a week, but slow down. Who watched CNBC this morning? 75 basis point cut at the Fed coming. Okay, we'll see. I'm not holding my breath. But at any rate, we're not selling a whole lot of houses, which is brutal. I'm glad Chris is in the room right now because I'm going to give him even more love than I've gave him before. I kind of did a little bit of a side note here. Who saw my market forecast during COVID, April? Okay, and there was a big debate. Chris were the V recovery. By the way, he called the V recovery before we were even in the downturn. Okay, yeah, it's going to go down. It's going to suck. It's going to be painful. But then we're going to bounce right back up. Again, I don't know how many people were calling for a V, but as far as I know, it was one. And he's sitting right over there. You guys are going to hear him in a minute because I'm almost done. But that's the V. Now, again, we can talk about, well, in the entire economy. To be honest with you, I don't give a rip about the entire economy. I let other people worry about that. I'm very selfish. I need to sell houses, okay? Those are pending sales. Did we have a V recovery in pending sales at COVID? We sure did. We absolutely did. I had a complete panic attack in March of 2020. It lasted about 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, Chris said, relax. This is different. We're going to have a V recovery. I didn't believe him, to be honest with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody says this. Everybody talks about like a L or a W or what, I don't know what the hell they were talking about. But look what happened. V recovery. And by the way, if you were in the real estate business, or a buyer, by the way, or a seller during that period of time, if you sat on the sidelines during 2020 and 21 and 22, too bad for you. That was a bad time to be out of the market. But at any rate, okay, so there's a couple articles in here, what's going on with sales. They are what they are. Days on market, if you follow this sort of stuff, the days on market have increased. It's not a big deal, okay? It's a big deal if you're an agent who's never been through a market like this. It's a big deal if you're a seller who last time you sold a house was a year ago. But 30, 40, 60 days, 90 days on market, it ain't a big deal, guys. Unfortunately, you have a lot of sellers that are panicking on that. So if you're in the market to sell, price it right. Maybe a smidge below the last comp. We're having trouble selling stuff at the prices at the current comp. But the days on market aren't ridiculous. Call it 30, 40 days. I question that, to be honest with you. It seems like it's higher than that. Month's supply of inventory is up. We're anywhere from, 3, 4, 5 months in San Bernardino. Check with me next month. It's possibly going to be different. This fluctuates all the time. Where were we month supply 3 years ago? 10 days? 0 days? It was really 0 days. It was 0 days. The only reason it said 2 weeks is because the agents were trying to sort through the 35 offers. It took them 2 weeks to sort through 35 offers. Otherwise, it would have been sold in the day. But month supply is up. It is what it is. Interest rates in the 10-year bond, I'm just going to go through this quickly. I'll let Chris tell you where we're at with this. But this has been my pain point. This has been my pain point for the last 3 years. So during COVID, we were hot. We've been frozen for the last several years. Will we unfreeze now? It sounds like maybe. Sounds like Jim says we're ordering some title orders. How's applications going, Danny? Deanne? We taking some applications? Up today. Awesome. So let's see what happens with the interest rate stuff. We'll go from there. We'll see what Chris has to say. If you really, really follow this stuff, I highly recommend you download the Mortgage News Daily app. It's free. It's awesome. You can check it pretty much in real time. I think this is yesterday. What's the bond market doing today? It's awesome. Okay, 4.0 something. Who cares? I don't know. So talk to me in a week. It won't be so awesome. But I follow this stuff incessantly. This will be interesting to see what Chris's forecast talks about. Hey, Gilbert. I tend to follow everybody. Wells Fargo for the last 6 months says interest rates are going to be at 6.5% forever. Mortgage Banker Association pretty much says interest rates are going to be at 6.5% forever. By the way, I'm defining forever for like the next 12 to 18 months. Nobody pretty much goes out too much past that. Well, we're better than that. We weren't, by the way, we were not better than that a week ago. So this is what my forecast is, and then we'll let Chris come up, and this is why you guys are really here. I think prices are going to be down at the end of this year. December to December, a little bit. It's meaningless. They could be back up. Is it going to be 0%, 2%, 5%? I don't know. But the trend is we're going to see median prices down a little bit. Inventory is going to be up. That's awesome. If you happen to have a house you're selling, just be patient, Alan. Be patient. We'll see what we can do with it. Sales volume sucks. We were having a little pre-meeting meeting. I don't know. Sales volume is going to be down at the end of this year. Doesn't feel like that's going to change anytime soon. Having said that, sustainable lower interest rates are awesome. But that's very self-serving. And I just don't feel like that's going to happen. So at any rate, so that's my stuff. There's my QR code. We're going to take how much time do we need to queue up Chris's deck? And then we're going to bring Chris up.